Hello, I'm Voltaire Tupas. Welcome to Rappler Talk. It's Women's Month, and this is the Women's Peace Table. Joining us are two women activists and human rights advocates and peace advocates conference on women's participation.
Public leadership.
Can you discuss more about
The
okay.
lists as one of its provisions that women have the right.
War that exists. As you can imagine, there is state is involved and the army is involved or the Central Reserve Police. And what women need to do is, well, they see themselves as being targeted within that violence. So a lot of the work that is going on in India is women coming together to realize that they need a different response, that violence is not serving them. And through nonviolent responses, they are able to at least try to make visible that what they're doing is different from the ongoing violence. Within our organizations, we're trying to make that visible. We are trying to help get them to meet with policymakers and decision makers and to say, look, wouldn't you prefer to negotiate with nonviolent actors as opposed to violent actors? We want to find a solution here. We do not want to just see the perpetuation of violence, because a lot of people in mining areas actually have an interest in the continuation of war. And women and communities are making the case that nonviolence works. As a result of that, we're working with the state to try to set up peace committees. We've even been to the Prime Minister of India to have a Department of Peace and to convince our Home Ministry that working with nonviolent actors is going to lead to a more sustainable solution. It is not moving that fast at this point, but at least it's becoming visible. And it's our coming to India to see how the panel is moving, how the work within MILF has been going, in order to get more lessons learned to take back to our area.
Interesting. I read under your watch. Do you see that happening as far as the Bangsamoro peace process is concerned?
We are working on two levels.
Yeah.
So there's a level, if you want to call it the macro level. So that's where we need to pass the enabling law. But that's not going. You can have a law, but the implementation is really going to be what happens on the ground. And so that's why one of the things that we have now introduced is the idea of people's peace tables. A platform for public participation is so necessary if you want to make peace durable. Because in the end, it's a breakdown of relationships, whether it's structural relationships, or just personal, individual relationships. So there has to be participation, and so people's peace tables will do that. And also that so which was be stable. So
that they can do, it shows them as victims will be the way they fund these marches, not that it comes from some party or some central funding source. So this decentralization, this sense of self-reliance and responsibility, which is behind these marches, is what is leading to a kind of a bottom-up approach to social action. And it's similar, it's parallel, I would say, to peace tables. That's why we see such a convergence, because it would be very easy, therefore, to set up peace tables, because they understand that around the centralized rice bank or the money that they're collecting, they could have a peace table in order to encourage more such action.
The way I understand it, it goes beyond the peace talks, the conflict.
Oh, yes.
It's a way of living in a community, at the household level. But I have this, as far as the Philippines is concerned, at a time when violence is all around, and then you've been hearing about the reports on killings.
Sure. The kind of society we have today, I don't think so. You know, so it has to be a better society, and it has to be a better society for all. It cannot mirror this one. So this is this attempt, the attempt to already look towards the future and imagining a future that is for all.
Yeah. Jill, but when state violence becomes the answer to protest, etc., how do you deal? What do you say to women, to people who are forced or who opt to fight back
See,
with
what
violence?
we do in our training, Walter, is we try to help people to understand that violence is also, we are complicit in a structural or societal violence. And so we have to start with ourselves and learn how to resist violence, learn how to identify and then resist it. And that's where the formation is so important. And this is where Gandhi still has some resonance, not only in India but outside, where people begin to realize that we can become more self-reliant, i.e. we can have the 1 rupee and the rice banks as a way of funding our own action. We need a kind of self-reliance because that gives us independence in which that we can be nonviolent. You need the space to be nonviolent. No, you need to reduce the dependency on violent structures in having the opening for nonviolence. And then it's the slow progression of deepening oneself and trying to see how we can see nonviolence more externally. Now this sounds very idealistic, but actually basically human beings are nonviolent. But I don't mean to blame it on the media because that's only an amplification of human perception. But I think if we can reframe and re-look at the non-violence that we have and that we can build on, because our desire is to have peaceful societies. You know, if the way we are living in society is creating immense violence, then we need to figure out how to disassociate ourselves and plant nonviolent action. So there are tools, there are strategies that we have available to us, and I think it's a question that we put them out on the table, understand them, and begin to use them in various situations.
With you at the helm of the peace process, and with the same perspective, you share the same perspective on confronting, dealing with violence. How are you keeping it together? You are dealing now not only with one rebel group, but two, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the Moro National Liberation Front. Two forces, one process. How are you keeping it together?
I did my work 40 years ago with Moro women, so I do understand the Moro struggle, and I have now started to. We have now started to look at what we're doing in a problem-solving way. So it's not anymore this. We're negotiating. We're not. We're trying to put together a new Bangsamoro. So how is that going to look like? And so we're starting to look very much into what is a peaceful society. What are we going to do? So it's not anymore. You know, you're my adversary. Let's keep negotiating. It's not there anymore. So that's why I've been so elated with the way the women have responded to this. What is this imagined future? Huh? What is the language? What are the structures in this new imagined? What's your role in that imagined future? So that's where we're going, and I'm starting to look really more and more into what they call the 8 pillars of peace.
What are these pillars?
Rather than looking at the roots of violence, the roots of conflict, the roots of this, but really starting to look at how is a peaceful society going to look like, and how are we going to work for that. So the 8 pillars are a well-functioning government, So we have to look at how is that government going to function. So that's the reason why one of the things we're going to do is make sure that there's leadership among the women. Okay, well-functioning government, um, low levels of corruption, acceptance of the rights of others, good relations with your neighbors, sound business environment, high levels of human capital, and equitable distribution of resources, and free flow of information. Now, are those possible? They are all possible. And at one point or other, the president has talked about all of these. So it's really just saying, okay, this is the focus of what we're going to be advocating, because this is what a peaceful society is going to look like. Because without that, we're always going back to what are the roots of the conflict? How do we, where's the war? How do we stop the violence? Instead of building, we keep talking about how are we going to rework something that's already destroyed our society. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I recall when the peace process collapsed after the Mama Sapano clash. You can feel, at least on social media, the hatred. You can read about the prejudice of many netizens against our Muslim brothers and sisters. That's partly part of the challenges as far as the consciousness of our society is concerned relative to peace building in Mindanao. So how do you?
Yeah, but that's the
use
reason
that?
why the People's Peace Tables are going to be very important, because there are ways, there are tools that one can use to bring the hate level down, to bring the anger level down. For example, one of the things that we will do with Peace Tables is that before you come and sit at the table, you have to release all your baggage. Okay, it's like coming into your house. You're going to come and sit at my table. You take off your shoes, or you take off your slippers. And you come here with all your goodwill. You come and sit. So this is one of the ways that the peace table is going to help.
It's an experience in itself.
Yeah.
The gathering.
Yeah.
It's literally a gathering of.
It's a
community.
gathering, yeah. But then you have to structure it a little bit so that it does bring that hate level down. And there are rituals that you can use.
Yeah. And you're doing it around the country.
All over the country,
Okay,
because it's not just Mindanao that needs this. It's the Visayas and Luzon as well. Because we need the support of everyone so that there is peace. And peace in Mindanao is going to benefit the entire country. So peace in Mindanao is a national concern. It is not only Mindanao's concern. So this is the reason why it has to be nationwide People's Peace Tables.
In 149 other countries,
Yes,
do you have a particular good practice which you can share, which we can learn from
Well,
the
I'd
peace
like-
tables in other countries?
I think that part of the beauty of this metaphor of peace table and including everybody, because inclusion is what's going to lead you to peace, right? So you're trying to include everybody. One of the things we take seriously is including really the most marginalized in the society, where they also can, maybe they don't have a table, maybe they sit on the floor, but they have an imaginary table around which they're sitting. And we want to always draw attention to those communities because they are being marginalized because of a kind of lack of being included in decision making, in economic structures, and not having, land or livelihood. And so what is really, really important is that they are at the table.
Yeah.
And people recognize that everybody has a table. And so what is beautiful about the 145 tables that now exist is it is proliferating because it's a tool that everybody could potentially use.
Yeah.
And this is why we have been so interested in the peace table concept, is because it fits with the inclusion which we see as absolutely central to a nonviolent society, which is really what we're trying to build. We're trying to see the areas that are affected by conflict, as you've been discussing today, as being areas of peace. And the only way we can do that is by taking people into confidence, ensuring that they're in a participatory position and that they are able to be part of the economy, be able to be able to live with dignity and with the respect.
Essentially, these are community conversations, am I
Yes,
right?
they're
Yes.
community
But how will
conversation. They
this-
can be small, they can be big. They determine themselves, and all we tell them is there are only two things: you denounce and you announce.
Yeah.
It's not enough that you keep denouncing, but you have to announce what's the alternative, what's your solution. So that is your agenda setting.
How will
Right,
this
yeah.
feed into the formal process?
It doesn't really need to feed into the formal process. This is really peace building from below.
Yeah.
And we are planning, and the two campaigns have come together, and we are going to have a march
Okay.
in 2020, and it will end in a big we will have a global women's peace table in Geneva,
Okay.
but it will also be there in India. The campaign is called Jai Jagat, which is victory to us all. So we've come together, the table, because if you remember Gandhi, the march, but it brought down an empire, right? The table of as many people as possible in ways that they themselves decide to do. And we will end in a very visible show of the humanity being united together in Geneva in 2020.
So basically, we're starting from Gandhi's tomb and taking the light from Gandhi's tomb in New Delhi and walking to Geneva with people to Geneva over a year-long period in order to take that flame, that inspiration to Geneva, and to then have a large community action involving a peace table in Geneva where people can congregate and really say peace through nonviolence is the way.
By then, Irene, will the Philippines be in a better position to assert itself in the international community as far as the peace building
You
effort?
It would only be imagined. Too much, there's too much at stake not to have peace, you know? And we cannot really comment on
To wrap this up, Irene, what do you tell millennials and other members of our society who are not as optimistic as you and others about the peace process precisely because of what happened during the Mama Sapano clash? You could feel the hatred, the prejudice during that time, but this time around, how are you going to assure the netizens?
Well, first thing I'm going to tell them is that you don't want to live that way, do you? So what are you going to do about it? Huh? So I think it is important for us to look at each other's humanity, that we are human beings. When in the end, when you take off our clothes, you take off everything, what do you have? You have you. You have a human being. That's what the Moro is. That's what the indigenous people are. I mean, and so once we realize that, and I think the involvement of people in these peace tables will enable us to have this national conversation about our common humanity, yeah, and in the new future. So I say drop with all these prejudices, because it's not helping any. And after dropping, imagine together that we can have a future that is good for all of us.
Very insightful discussion. Thank you for joining us, and happy Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month too. Thank you.
We've been talking to Irene Santiago, Chair of the Implementing Panel for the Bangsamoro Peace Accords, and Jill Carr Harris, the Director of the International Gandhi Initiatives for Nonviolence and Peace. Thank you for watching Rappler Talk. I'm Walter Tupas.